Hi everyone, welcome to Dear BAMf, the show for PR and marketing pros like you, hosted by Beck Bamberger of BAM. BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today, on the Dear BAMf podcast, we're talking with Dan Tarman, CEO and founder of DanTarman.com, a business advisory and marketing consulting firm based in Southern California. Previously, he served as vice president of communications at GOAT Group, where he led all aspects of communications for the company. Dan has more than 25 years of experience as a senior communications, marketing, and brand strategy professional, and has served in a number of positions with leading companies and consultancies. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone. This is Dear BAMf, the podcast for PR marketing pros such as yourself. We cover all your advice and hairy questions on this podcast, as many as we can, that is. And we are rolling here in season 2. Today we have on Dan Tarman, as you just heard from GOAT, who is gracing us with his presence here at the very last of December before we all go out and break. Thank you, Dan, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm excited to get into our questions. We got some gnarly ones here. First off, we like to start. What's the 60-second soundbite on GOAT for those who don't know?
So GOAT was founded in 2015 to solve a problem that had existed in terms of buying sneakers online. Mm-hmm. The market was pretty much flooded with counterfeits and fakes. And our founders identified that as a problem based on a personal experience. One of our co-founders, Daishin Sugano, was a sneakerhead. He bought a retro pair of Jordans from another platform. He was really excited because it had a lot of emotional meaning to him. And when he got it, he quickly realized it was fake. So he and Eddie Liu, who had been roommates and serial entrepreneurs together, had founded several other businesses, put their heads together and said, there's a problem to be solved and there's a growing secondary market for sneakers. Maybe there's a business idea there. And so from that kernel of an idea and personal experience, GOAT was created. Fast forward 5 years later, GOAT is one of the largest sneaker marketplaces in the world. We have 30 million members. We call our customers members, 600,000 sellers. We just closed our Series Z funding round. The company's valued at $1.75 billion. We've expanded into apparel and other categories. And GOAT is kind of like the OG in sneakers.
Yeah.
It's a very authentic brand, no pun intended, in terms of authenticity. We have a proprietary authentication process.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask
which
that.
pervades everything we do. So that, we fixed that problem and it really works. It's a combination of algorithmic and as well as human authentication. But the company's created a real brand and a platform. It has a point of view about streetwear style and culture and fashion and, a pretty enthusiastic and passionate community around it.
Yeah, it is fun. If you are into any sneaker, I personally have used the site before. So I'm a fan and it's so beautiful, easy to navigate. And I definitely understand how people are crazy about it because you're on there looking at the shoes you want or now the apparel that you want. I get it. How fun. What a fun role.
Yeah, it's a fun role. It's a great company and we've had a lot of success and we had tailwinds coming into this year. And with all of the shifting dynamics of the world we're living in and the move towards e-commerce, it's been a very good year for the business as well.
That kind of leads me to the next thing, which is what are you most proud of in accomplishing, say, in the last 12 months?
So I joined the company in August of 2020, and I'm the first ever global head of communications. And so they hired me. I'm an experienced hire, if you look at my background.
Yeah, I'll say.
And, I
we
think
just heard about it, yes.
There was a recognition of the need to be a little more intentional and strategic with our communications. We built this global brand, but the comms was quite ad hoc and reactive and tactical. It was good, but not great. And so I got here and I would kind of point to 2 really great milestones. The first was the announcement of our funding round, which closed at the end of September, or we announced at the end of September. We really used that to change the narrative around GOAT, to elevate our share of voice, to get our due, if you will. And it was very, very successful. He also used it as a way to draw attention to our expansion into other categories like apparel. And so we generated a lot of great media coverage. We covered a lot of surface area in all the right places. And so that was a great kind of first shot out of the gates, if you will.
Yeah. You got a wonderful article, by the way, in the Wall Street Journal on it. That was beautiful.
Thank you. And, it was just a culmination of a lot of work. It wasn't just me. It's just, I think I helped bring a sense of organization and strategic focus. But I have a great team that preceded me.
Takes a team.
They're awesome. They're really awesome. And so I think, we've just become a bit more focused and sharp in what we do. And it does for sure take a team. And they've forgotten more about GOAT than I already know. So great props to the team. The other thing I would point to is the holiday season. So not surprising for an e-commerce site, a D2C e-commerce site, this is a really pivotal moment and period of the year. And traditionally, GOAT's Black Friday is a big deal. It's an event. It's not just like your typical kind of doorbuster at a traditional retailer. And so looking at Black Friday this year, we really wanted to take it to a different level in terms of media coverage, to use Black Friday in our event as a vehicle through which to tell the business story. And so we, again, very successful. We generated great media. We had our CEO on Black Friday on CNBC on Closing Bell, Bloomberg, Yahoo Finance, big hits in major media. And again, the intent was to tell the business story through the lens of the holiday. And so we're really pleased and proud of what we've accomplished. It's still kind of foundational, but it's been a good 5 or 6 months in terms of the business and our narrative.
You've had a fast ramp, a great one. I love it.
Yeah, thanks. Honestly, as anybody that's a communicator listening to this knows, it's a lot easier when you've got good material to work with.
Oh, God. Yes. Well, actually, speaking of that, I think we got a couple questions related to that perhaps here. So let's start with the question. Oh, wait, wait, though. What's your favorite way to tell a story right now?
Well, in terms of like vehicles, I would say vehicles and content. So I'll start with the latter. It's not exactly what you asked, but I'll say it anyhow.
Sure.
And it relates to what I just said, which is, for a company like GOAT, the best way to tell the business story is through the story of the brand, right? To let the brand be the proof of the business. And by doing that, it opens up opportunities of channels where there might be interest and relevance for us to do that. So we still use and rely on traditional earned media. It's very important, particularly as we're reaching business audiences. Of course, for consumer audiences, they're more inclined to consider the brand and take action related to the brand based on other channels that are more in the domain of marketing. So GOAT does a lot of storytelling, for instance, through Instagram. We have 3.5 million followers on Instagram. And it's a beautifully curated Instagram feed or platform that's in the domain of marketing. But so we tell the brand story largely through places like Instagram and other channels. But on the media side, we cover all of our trade media. We're increasingly have penetrated into more of the business press. But we're also looking for other channels like podcasts in the age of COVID, where everybody is at home and I think people are more, starved for content. There are opportunities through things like this, podcasts and other platforms, where if you have something interesting to say, you can reach audiences in a way that's not intermediated by media, not filtered by media, directly speaking to them, and then increasingly using our own channels. And that's something that we're going to be doubling down on in 2021. We have a big installed base of engaged users. And so why not speak directly to them through our pipes? GOAT as a content creator about our business is something that I think we'll be doing more of going forward.
Oh, there's so much you can do and so much fun. You're, I would say, in the category of like, okay, this is a fun, awesome job. Whereas I've had other people on who are deep in the trenches of enterprise, but that could be a lot of fun too. It's just depending on how you look at it and what you're doing. Well, let's get into our questions, Dan, because we do have a little stack here that we'll go through. First off, I will read it here. Dear BAMf, I love the startup I'm at. I'm the head of comms and I'm constantly challenged. The other good news is my startup is headed to an IPO, most likely, given the recent valuation we just got, plus our CEO's constant cheering of this being the goal. The bad news is, or potential bad news, the C-suite in place is a bit unpolished. I'm getting sweaty just thinking of having our CTO or CEO on national business TV appearances, for instance. I've artfully avoided unscripted media ops like live TV, but as we get closer to this goal, I want to mitigate surprises that could make us look unpolished or worse, foolish to Wall Street. Obviously, I can just tell them that media training is a must, but we've done that with limited quote unquote success. What could I pivot my message to now if you've dealt with this before? Ooh, Dan, what do you say?
Yeah, so there's a couple of suggestions that I would offer for consideration. That's a tough one. And I think those of us that are in these roles will confront these issues because, typically you're going to be working with a less seasoned leadership team. And in many instances, teams that have not taken a company all the way through becoming public and all the scrutiny that is associated with that. I do think it's a dilemma. Here's one thing for consideration is to engage those leaders and to show them examples of other companies that have gone through the journey, good and bad, so they can see what the expectations will be on them by using analogies. So that's one so it's not just the comms person that's, banging on pots and pans and jumping up and down in front of them, but instead you can point to real world examples. And then hopefully once you've sensitized them to the importance, one thing that we're doing and that I would encourage others to consider is I think media training is great, but media training is like my 9-year-old plays on a travel baseball team and he's a really good player and they practice 3 days a week, even in COVID. They practice 3 days a week.
For a 9-year-old?
For 9. And so it's serious stuff.
Yes, it's quite serious.
And they're good, but it's a lot different when they're at practice versus when they're playing in a game. And so they were at a tournament a few weeks ago and they were playing against some teams from all over Southern California. And it was like Klieg lights are on and people perform differently. The reason I mention that is not to brag about my 9-year-old, which I can do all day, but to say I would identify lower risk opportunities for those executives to stretch their legs, so to speak, to give them some real world practice where the risk isn't too great, but where they can actually do the stuff, where you get out of the laboratory or the classroom. And then you can build on that so that when it is prime time, if you do need to deploy them, there's a greater likelihood that they'll succeed. It does seem important as companies move toward the public markets to be able to have, an executive team, not just one leader. And so they might not be the best, but you can give them enough real world experience where you'll have confidence that you'll get a better outcome.
I'm all about reps. You got to do the reps. And to your point, I completely agree, Dan, on, okay, what is the lower tier stuff? Like, can you be on Cheddar, for example? That's not CNBC Live. That could, for example, train the live component, provide feedback, and actually put them in the real life situation, just what you're saying, because media training only does so much.
And just to that point, kind of like peel back the curtain. I was talking a few minutes ago about our Black Friday related media.
Yeah.
So our strategy with that, we were going to be setting our CEO up on a bunch of really high profile opportunities. We started with Cheddar TV for him to do some stretching. The week before Black Friday, we said, we're going to do Cheddar. It's great. It's the right platform, but it's lower risk. And it gave him an opportunity to kind of air out the messaging and get comfortable. And sure enough, by the time he was on CNBC and Bloomberg, he nailed it.
See, training wheels. Yes. Big fan. I also think too, you were mentioning we'll give the comparison of, well, here's people who've done great. Here's people who've bombed it. And I agree with that. Although I've then seen a little bit of a backfire of well, that's not me. I'm not going to do that. And you're like, oh, okay. So again, trial by fire, put them in live, but lower risk opportunities. Sounds like the name of the game.
Yeah. And then, hopefully when you do put them in the lower risk opportunity, they do fine, but you record it. And then you sit down with, Mary, the CTO, and you say, hey, let's just do a little bit of a retro on this. And, what went well, and they'll see themselves. And
what do you think could be improved? Nothing is more gut wrenching than watching yourself on TV. So usually people can come up with their own regards of how they can be better.
Yeah, nobody wants to suck when it's time for the big leagues.
Exactly. That's also true. Exactly. Okay. Next question here. Dear BAMf, my client is being sued by a competitor for IP infringement. The client refused to discuss potential responses to direct media inquiries or even acknowledge that saying nothing implies even more guilt or drama. I drafted a general statement to which they said they would rather not respond to at all. This is a relatively small industry, and while they can't ignore this infringement, the media will probably not want to feature or interview them if they don't even acknowledge media's direct questions. How do I address this with the client?
So it's a really good question. I honestly question the premise of the question. I'm a lawyer by background, which, so I come at things with at least a kind of risk management hat on.
Yes, as lawyers do.
As we're trained to do. And we just dealt with, it goes, some pretty challenging IP litigation, which we resolved. And I don't think media actually expect companies to go deep, to double click into the vagaries of IP litigation. I think that it's more important to not prejudice your legal strategy longer term than to secure maybe a shorter term ephemeral gain with a media relationship. My experience is they'll get over it, even in a small industry. Now, you don't want to seem completely inauthentic and evasive, and I think that sounds like that's at the heart of the question. A strategy would be to go on background with the reporter and to explain what you can, and to explain that, unfortunately, on the record, we're not going to be able to be particularly transparent because of considerations with regard to the litigation. So please understand that. So I think some of it comes to body language. I also tend to try to avoid the boilerplate, cliched, litigation-related messaging. As a matter of policy, we don't comment on litigation, yet we will strenuously defend our position or whatever the BS cliche words are. I mean, you're better off saying nothing, in my view, because I don't think that gets you anywhere. I do think some of the work can be done on background, where you're engaging the reporter in a trusted way and you agree this is as far as we can go. But they're going to get over it. If you're a company that's a newsworthy company, they're going to deal with you, and you'll have other opportunities to provide kind of favor to them, in my view.
Yeah, if you're Apple, then this will be all over the place. But in this situation, it sounds like you're not that on huge scale. And I think your comment on the have it on background with maybe a reporter, I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. I think maybe a risky strategy, but assuming you have a CEO or someone who can do that very well, that could be helpful. Interesting. I didn't think you would necessarily say that. But yeah, I agree with you on like it blows over, basically.
I would almost never put the CEO on the phone with regard to litigation. There should be someone that's shielding her or him. So whether it's counsel or you as the spokesperson, so that you have one step removed if you need to.
Yes. Good plan on that, especially if it's sensitive to, let's say, the CEO and they have it personal. You don't want any little problems with that. Yeah, blow-ups of any sort. Okay. Our last question, Dan. Here we go. Dear BAMf, working with a prospective client who we thought would have great newsworthy announcements and a solid flow of news. While in the decision-making process, they announced a huge funding round and got decent coverage. How do we talk about the scope, MSA, the KPIs with now a huge newsworthy moment already blown past? Oh, we've had this happen to us before. Go ahead.
Listen, it's challenging. I've been on both sides, on the agency side and on the in-house side. And on the agency side, you would always want to have good material to work with. And if the company has already kind of gone there and, you wonder where are we going to add value, it is challenging. And I think that's, kind of at the heart of the question. I also think that it's incumbent on agencies to be generators of actionable creativity and not to just be in charge of helping to make announcements happen. That's certainly not what we look for in our partners. I don't even like to call them agencies, they're partners. Execution is really important, but we should be collectively working to generate actionable ideas that aren't just the announcements. I've long said in my in-house roles, we are not the announcement department. I'm not sitting back waiting for news that I can package. My job is to help us look across the enterprise and identify opportunities for us to drive our narrative, to create our own moments. And so, sure, it's worth having kind of a come to honesty moment with the client if they've just kind of communicated the biggest thing that's ever going to happen or that's going to happen for some horizon. So fair. But then what else are you going to do? And I think, the challenge for partners is to continually determine where and how you can add value. And so if an agency partner came to me and kind of threw up their hands and said, well, you just had your biggest news, honestly, my response would be, if that's what you think is your value add, I don't know if you're the right partner for us.
Very good point. And I would also add, what an awesome opportunity, hopefully for you. Now you can say, oh, okay, so you guys got some decent coverage. Well, when we're working with you, we want to just don't do decent. We want to make this excellent. This is how we could have handled that if we had had that opportunity. That's now past. Let's work on the future and what now other things we can do so we can elevate to a much higher level than the bar. Because you just showed us the bar, basically. That's why we're here, to bring the bar way up.
100%. Again, I think you're honing in on maybe part of the heart of this question.
Yeah.
Sometimes we do get tunnel vision when we're in the in-house roles. And sometimes we also don't want to kind of hear, you could have done a lot better. If you're working with an enlightened communications partner in-house, they'll want to hear that because they want to do better, right?
They do.
And so, of course, it also would probably be a good moment to say, listen, if we're going to be partners, you should engage us transparently so that we can help. Good isn't good enough, right? So what does great look like and how do we get there?
Exactly. Dan, thanks for being on today and answering all the gnarly questions we get here constantly flowing in. It's been wonderful and helpful. By the way, never thought the law background would help on the comms front. That's cool.
Yeah.
How great.
It's good to be a recovering attorney.
And look at where you are now. I love it at this awesome, huge company that I personally am a fan of. Thank you again and happy holidays. I know we're doing this in the end of December. It'll be out later, of course, but appreciate it. And I hope you sell a lot of sneakers.
Right on. Thank you. Everybody, shop till it hurts.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMf, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show was created by BAM, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Alon. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMf. Don't forget the F. If you'd like to get notified of our latest episodes, subscribe to us wherever you listen to podcasts and review us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.